Multiple comic book shop owners are talking about a rebound this year. Things have turned around. They're looking much better. And it's all on the back of DC Comics. How did this happen? Why is this happening? That's what we're here to talk about today. What's Marvel doing? Are they even adding to any of this stuff? I think the answers are going to surprise you. We've got that coverage, as well as some other long-term industry challenges that are going to need to be overcome to get a full rebound. This is all in response to a recent interview, a comic book retailer panel on Mark Miller's Miller Time YouTube channel, talking to James Robinson of Graham Crackers and Phil Boyle of Coliseum of Comics. They laid out a lot of interesting facts about the comic book industry in early 2025. The comic book retail landscape is seeing a major turnaround, with DC Comics leading the way thanks to its bold Absolute line. That renewed interest is translating directly into sales. John Robinson, owner of Graham Crackers Comics, said, "I was comparing the last 6 months of this year with the same period last year, and not only is every Marvel, DC, and independent publisher up for us, and I'm sure for everybody industry-wide, we're up by units as well." Boyle added to that momentum, noting, "I do see the excitement in DC product. RDC is up 43% over last year." Robinson went even further, reporting a 75% increase in overall DC sales. Both agreed that the Absolute Universe is powering most of the growth. As Boyle put it, "I'm going to say 80% of our growth in DC is Absolutes," and Robinson backed that up. Titles like Absolute Batman are doing more than lifting DC numbers. They're driving traffic across the board, Boyle explained. When people came in to get the new DCs, they also took a look at the Marvels. They took a look at the image. And noting a 43% increase in DC Comics sales is absolutely enormous. And then John Robinson backing it up and saying, "I've seen a 75% increase." Those are absolutely jaw-dropping numbers. And congratulations to DC Comics and Scott Snyder. And it appears the major success and interest in Absolute Universe titles is allowing comic book customers to find other titles out there from other publishers. I genuinely never thought I would be covering a period of time in comic books where DC was the driving force of sales for the entire industry. A wise man once said the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And essentially, since the 1980s, Marvel has been the driving force in the comic book industry for almost that entirety. There have been a few anomalies where DC was certainly doing better than Marvel. New 52 would be the best example. DC Rebirth would be another example. But it's never actually translated to the long-term industry leader really overtaking Marvel in popularity and becoming the driving force in the entire industry. But DC did introduce Superman. They made superheroes mainstream all the way back in the beginning. I'm hoping that this can be a long-term trend to where if Marvel don't rebound, that DC can pick up the baton and run with it. Obviously, right now, led by the Absolute Universe. But I do think there probably is a shelf life on Absolute comic books. We've never seen an imprint featuring characters strictly in an Elseworld sense come in and overtake a line and do that forever. There's normally been a shelf life, the best example obviously being the original incarnation of Marvel Comics Ultimate Universe, which certainly was an enormous deal for about 5 to 8 years, but did eventually taper off over time. I believe that will happen eventually, but this gives Marvel Comics some time to get their shit together, to actually rethink about what they're doing, what they can do to get back in the game. But it also gives DC Comics a great opportunity with more emphasis and focus on heroes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter to see if they can start moving some of these Absolute readers over to the mainline continuity as well. But it certainly appears that DC Comics are basically driving the industry right now, obviously being powered by the Absolute Universe itself. Now, what's Marvel doing? While DC is riding high, Marvel's performance is more complicated. Sales are up, but retailers are raising eyebrows over what's actually driving it. John Robinson shared, "I sold 14% more new Marvel comics in the first half of this year than I did in the first half of last year." But when asked what was behind that growth, he admitted, "I don't know, honestly. The quality is not there. It's not like people are coming in and going, 'Oh man, I can't wait to get the next Defenders,' just so I don't offend anybody. I don't see that excitement, but they're buying more." He also raised concerns about what's happening behind the scenes at Marvel, saying, "The stories I hear is that the page rates are terrible, and that's why you get so many people from other countries working for them. I hear the page rates are just awful, and it's hard to make a living even as a successful creator." And it appears that rising tide that is DC, led by the Absolute Universe, are raising all the ships and are lifting up even Marvel sales with it, or at least in the case of Graham Cracker comic books. And I think that is absolutely amazing that they're able to see an increase in sales year over year when Marvel Comics are clearly not doing well. There's not a lot of creativity there. And what he's citing there, as far as behind the scenes, that Marvel's page rates are ridiculously bad, is something I've been hearing also for about the last 6 months. I've heard page rates at Marvel Comics are actually going down, which is pretty crazy when you realize that Marvel Comics page rates have been kind of stagnant for about 30 years, and now they're starting to go down. And readers are noticing that lack of quality almost across the board. You get what you pay for, and if you're not paying good rates, you're not going to be getting good comic books. And that is the general feeling that I think a lot of people have about Marvel Comics these days, is that while there are a few things here and there that are definitely worth your time, for the most part, out of those 80 books that they released every month, you can skip 72 of them. You can skip 75 of them because they're just not even worth checking out anymore. Because in a lot of ways, it does feel like Marvel Comics aren't trying. You know what? We're the market leader. DC is always trying to catch us. It doesn't matter if we ruin Spider-Man. It doesn't matter if we break the X-Men franchise. It doesn't matter what we do in the pages of Captain America. And I think they're getting a cold, hard dose of reality that it absolutely does matter. Without quality, there are no sales. Without quality, there are no readers. Without quality, it's very hard to sell the product. And CB Cebulski and Tom Brevoort and company should feel very, very lucky that DC are at least doing something to get people excited about comic books to where they're still buying them, because they're still showing up their comic book shop. Marvel really aren't giving many people a reason to show up every single Wednesday in their comic book shop. And this is the first time that Marvel Comics have been really challenged in a long time, and we'll see how they react. Are they going to be able to step up to the plate and try to compete with DC Comics? Are they going to focus on their bigger characters telling better stories? Are they going to try and go out and get the best creators and bring them into the fold at Marvel Comics and try and go toe-to-toe with DC Comics while they're kind of dominating the landscape right now with Absolute Universe? A recent news report regarding the next project for Steve McNiven kind of indicates that maybe not. Maybe they're just going to sit there and take the L, which I think would be bad for the industry. But if DC are going to take the ball and run with it, maybe we don't need Marvel to be producing great comic books for a healthy industry. Who knows? But it would be nice to see them actually try. Now, there are a few other things that they talk about that were definitely beneficial about the Absolute Universe and DC's renaissance. Even as new titles hit shelves, the back issue market is booming, and DC is once again at the center of it. Phil Boyle offered this snapshot. Our back issue market, I took the numbers from the first 5 months of this year. We sold 11,000 more back issues than we did in the first 5 months of last year. And Boyle pointed again to the Absolute line as a key driver. He said, with DC Comics coming back into the fold with Absolute Batman, it's really encouraged a lot of people, hey, I hadn't been introduced to this. Let's go take a look. And that is absolutely phenomenal news for comic book retailers, that the back issue market is booming, especially if you have a healthy stock of back issue inventory, that people are coming in, they're finding their favorite Absolute Universe title. Hopefully they're grabbing an Aquaman. Maybe they're checking out an Ultimate Spider-Man or a Transformers comic book as well. But then they're hitting their dollar bins and finding a few more comic books to buy, to the tune of 11,000 more comic books sold in the back issue market, at least at Coliseum Comics chain of stores in Florida, than they did in the early part of 2024, which is absolutely astounding stuff. Hopefully people are coming in, maybe discovering Absolute Batman. I've heard about this Batman character. I didn't know where to start. I'll start at this new #1. It's a different version of the character. Wait, I really like Batman. Let's go check out some back issues. Maybe I like the in-continuity Batman. Or you discover Wonder Woman for the first time. You're like, wow, I kind of like what Kelly Thompson is doing there. Maybe I should go find the George Perez run. And hopefully, if they are bringing in lots of new readers to the Absolute Universe, they're able to discover their in-continuity counterparts, maybe in some of these back issues. And now you've got lifelong Batman fans, lifelong Wonder Woman fans that are certainly going to support that Absolute line, but are going to look for other opportunities, whether it be in back issues or maybe new in-continuity runs to really go and support these characters. And that can only mean good business for the comic book industry. So that's been another awesome byproduct of this big turnaround that some comic book shops are talking about in early 2025 based on DC. Now, not everything is puppy dogs and ice cream. There are still a handful of ongoing concerns that both of the retailers talked about. Even with growth in some areas, comic shop owners are sounding the alarm about long-term industry challenges. John Robinson pointed to a worrisome demographic trend. I'm still concerned because I'm not seeing the 14-year-olds. I'm not seeing the 12-year-olds. I'm just seeing middle-aged men, and that's disconcerting. I don't even see as many women as I used to in the early 2000s. He also flagged the strain placed on retailers since the shift away from Diamond as a sole distributor. I'm seeing multiple stores closing up. I've spoken to other retailers who said, if I can't buy it all from Diamond, it's too much work, It's not worth my effort. I'm just going to close down. Phil Boyle backed that up saying, we're finding that there's a lot of stores that never really did turn the corner after COVID, and they're looking for an exit. Most shop owners agree that the increasing corporate mindset at the big publishers is hurting creative continuity. Boyle put it plainly, the companies are now so corporate that they're just focused on the bottom line. It's really impacted the ability to get creators and make contracts and everything else. Robinson added, no one wants to do a run like Burn. They want to play in the playground for 6 months and then move on to something else. And it's hard for Phil and I to grow readership with that. I do want to put out there that there are other retailers that I've heard from that are saying these Absolute Universe titles are bringing in more teenagers. It sounds like that's not what John Robinson and Graham Crackers are experiencing. And that has to be an overarching concern for the entire comic book industry, and has been for several years now, that they lost 2 or 3 generations of comic book readers to manga. If the Absolute Universe can continue and be hot, people talk about it, and maybe they start releasing volume 1 when they do the trades in that compact comic format, and they absolutely should do that for all of these Absolute comic books. When they put out that first trade, it should also be available in that manga-sized form factor, and I think that would go a long way. But the comic book industry, without a shadow of a doubt, needs to find younger readers, and it's been that way for quite some time, and has definitely been worrisome for a lot of people. Now, as far as comic book retailers shutting down because of the amount of distributors, apparently what a lot of retailers are experiencing is they have 3 times as much work because there's 3 different distributors, but they're not making any more money, which is making comic book retail, which already has narrow margins, even more difficult to continue on in. And there are shops out there closing down. They don't want to deal with the hassle. It sounds like Phil backed it up because he has a retailer Facebook page talking to them that some people never really made it out of COVID correctly. They just never got their business back in order. And it's time to move on. It's time to partner. It's time to sell off or do something of that nature. We don't need to see the direct market shrink any more than it is. At some point, if we keep losing shops and not getting new shops, the market itself won't be able to sustain it anymore. It'll become too small. So that is definitely bad news. And I'm definitely with them with the frustration that we get no runs, especially from Marvel. We've been talking about that for a long time now, but there's no longevity to any of this stuff. None of the series tend to last very long, and it seems like the creators don't stick around very long. Not everybody can do a 13, 15-year run like Chris Claremont, but can we get a 5-year run in there? Maybe a 6-year run. It does feel like most creators are in there for 6 months, maybe a year, and then they're ready to bounce on to another character or another project and move on with their lives. And it would be nice if DC and Marvel started locking some of these creators in and say, hey, you're going to be the Flash writer for the next 5 years. You're going to be the new Batman writer for at least 6 years. Get comfortable, because we want to put you on our main character and make you a superstar to where we can sell stuff on your name alone. And I do think that's an enormous problem, because we're not getting long runs. We're not also creating new stars. And I don't think the comic book industry, Marvel or DC, have really created many stars in the last decade. Most people that have become stars have kind of done it on their own terms, not by becoming one of the greatest Spider-Man or Batman or X-Men writers of all times. And it certainly would help everybody. We had longer runs, people becoming associated with those characters, becoming superstars, and really drawing in that audience. But it was definitely a very illuminating conversation. They talked about a lot of stuff on there. Definitely go over to Miller Time, check out that Retailer Summit with Phil Boyle, John Robinson, Mark Miller, and you will find out a lot of great information. I kind of parsed it down here for the channel, but there was a lot more stuff out there to check out. If you appreciate this kind of coverage of comic books, because you can't get it very many places besides here, and you'd like to help support us, keep the mission moving forward, help us keep the lights on, the videos flowing, the place to do that is Thinking Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. There's a button right here. And if you decide to become part of the family, you get awesome podcasts featuring your favorite guests right here on the channel as well.